What's up, ego hackers? This is the CS Joseph podcast. I am your host, CS Joseph, as usual. And we have a dope question today for you. It is an ISTP question. Thank God, finally, somebody. Oh yeah, shout out to the guy who gave this question. Thank you for posting it. Thank you for asking it. It's about time to get some more variety in here. Although we've had a little bit more variety because we've had two INFP related questions this month, but I am happy to have an ISTP question, which is what is the best way to build good habits as an ISTP? Oh, what an amazing question. It's so good. So spicy. Very spicy. So, enough of the spice. SI Critic. This is an SI Critic related question, which basically is how can an ISTP become a wiser person, essentially, as a result of developing good, healthy habits? Because habits, ultimately, good, healthy habits, is what keeps an ISTP out of jail. It also keeps your spouse from cheating on you with said ISTP, because ISTPs, out of all the 16 types, facilitate cheating the most. They're always the person that people cheat with. It's because their NI child just cannot help themselves. And from their point of view, because NE trickster, it's like, well, it was their choice, so not my problem. It was a good F though, so we're good, And it's like, okay, yeah, wow, let's be a hypergamous hoe, or let's be a man whore there, or let's completely cheapen all of the women in our lives, or let's go out of our way to screw over the men in our lives, because the cult of the mature masculine should be going out of their way to not. Number one rule is never screw another man's woman, and the number one rule for the cartel of the mature feminine is make sure that you as a woman are not cheapening your fellow women, basically. So keep that in mind. So healthy habits for an ISTP. How do they actually do it? Well, as dumb as it sounds, it literally really is repetition. Repetition, because responsible extroverted sensing, in order to develop your extroverted sensing parent, you have to get to the point where you are on a daily practice regimen. And in order to have that practice regimen, it requires the self-discipline to make sure that you are practicing religiously. And the definition of religion actually is a repeated act. So the best way to build good habits for an ISTP is to develop a religion of good habits over time, a religion of practice, the religion of practice for the ISTP. And the other thing is that it's not good enough to just practice your craft or whatever that habit is, but it's good to share that habit with other people, collect their feedback, improve that habit, test it in the field, etc. And I think that is a very important approach. But if you're not going to do it that way, well, then you're going to give yourself some problems over time. And the reason why is because it's just like STPs say, if you don't have the life experience to back up what you're doing, then you have no business sharing your thoughts. Yet it's so funny because the deadly sin of the ISTP is pride. And that prideful TI hero is going to share what they think with other people, even though they themselves expect other people to have life experience before they share what they think. But the ISTP is just going to skip all that and do it anyway themselves. And it's like they just walk around doing this, okay, well, do as I say, not as I do type of approach, which is inherent within the ISTP Templar hypocrisy as a result. So they have to avoid that. And it really comes down to having healthy routine, a religion of practice, right? But then also a religion of teaching. They need to teach other people those same habits and see whether or not those people are able to succeed with those habits. And if those people are not succeeding with those habits, they need to reevaluate those habits. The thing is with an ISTP is that unless they get to a point where they're able to develop create memory totems through memory tools. I mean, my one of my ISTP professional mentors, his name is Kevin Osborne, fantastic person. He taught me how to mind map, and mind mapping changed my life for the better. And it's a memory tool that he used in order for him to collect all of his thoughts in one place, and it actually allowed him to develop good habits because all of a sudden he was able to remember everything. So you need to have not just good note taking as an ISTP, you need to have organized note taking. It's not good enough for you to just take notes. You have to organize them. You have to see how they fit together. And the best way for an ISTP to take notes is through a process called mind mapping. And you can get a mind map program called Mind Node, one word. It's like an Apple app, etc. It's fantastic. It costs money though. Or you can get it at whimsical.com. But learn mind mapping. Mind mapping is a great way as a memory tool. So literally the process is this. The ISTP needs to develop memory totems by using memory tools to create, like mind mapping, to create those memory totems. And they need to keep track of things. The ISTP just has to sit down and just keep track of stuff. That means they got to walk around holding a notepad with them or using their notepad program on their phone and actually have the self-discipline to actually update on a regular basis. They're going to lose out on life. They're going to be completely behind in life, and that's not going to be good for them. Their life is just going to fall apart, and it's never actually going to help. Because the reason why is because the ISTP oftentimes forgets their own failure. And as much as they forget success, but remembering failure is more important because remembering failure is actually what ends up creating more success in the long run. Remembering success does not necessarily mean it's going to prevent failure. Okay, most people think it does, but that's not actually the truth. However, remembering failure is what actually produces a success. And this is why I like to tell, for example, ENTJs, like, hey, you got to write everything down. I've even told a few ENTJs who are clients of mine that they have to create a book of failures. They literally have a notepad or a notebook where they actually write down the date and time where they failed and keep track of all of their failures in one book. And then every now and then go relive all of their failure in a night and remind themselves of everywhere they've actually failed. That's a huge, huge thing for an ENTJ to do because they could see how that locks their achievement. Whereas with an ISTP, it benefits an ISTP having a similar habit because they're actually able to see where they're lacking in performance. And it keeps their expert sensing parent sharp. It keeps it responsible because all of a sudden they're able to see where it's been irresponsible, basically. And that's really important. That's a really, really big deal. And you're not going to be able to develop a habit because how do you know you developed a habit if you're not even keeping track of where you've been? Because a habit means it's a pattern of behavior. Okay, you can't just do one thing one time and say it's a habit. That's not how it works, ISTPs. You have to have a pattern of behavior. And that pattern of behavior, it comes from you getting to the point in your life where it's like, hey, I've done the same thing 4 times in a row. Okay, when you're at 4 times, it's a pattern. You could even claim it's technically a pattern at 3 times, but 4 times means it's actually going to. So work to get good, healthy activities or things, and you want to turn them into habits, you have to do it 4 times. Commit to doing 4 times. It literally just comes down to commitment and levying your commitment. But then you also have to keep track of how well you did those things and whether or not you did them 4 times. Keep track of what you're doing throughout the day. This is why, like, ISTPs who journal is super important if they actually can. And they'd be like, wow, this journey, this is dumb. Why am I wasting my time doing it? Well, it's not a waste of time because if they actually read their journal, they can actually see their progression in their journey of growth over time, which is incredibly necessary, incredibly important. They themselves will not be able to, the best ISTPs in the world do a form of journaling. It's the absolute best ones. And it's so funny, like I met an ISTP once who had like a little notebook that she carried with her everywhere she went. She'd write down everything. That is a great ISTP. But she's like maybe one of maybe 4 or 5 in my whole life that I've met that actually does that. The rest of them are just kind of like walking around in life as zombies, incapable of knowing where they've been. And because they don't know where they've been, they have no idea where they're going because any trickster. They don't know the consequence of their actions. And they're not going to know the consequence of their actions because they can't look and see what past consequences to past actions actually were. Extroverted intuition trickster does this to them consistently. And their SI critic makes them very, very forgetful. But their SI critic, because it's pessimistic, it has an opportunity to actually develop the self-discipline necessary to keep track of those things. They need to track their failure. They need to track their success. They need to see how it fits together and mind map it out. And then as a result, their ESTJ unconscious will create the system. It will create a system of positive, good, healthy habits that they can follow on a regular basis, because they will be able to identify their bad habits and no longer do those behaviors anymore and work to not do those behaviors anymore. And then they'll be able to identify the good habits because they're interest based. They'll see which of these actions or behaviors benefits them most and which ones benefit them the least, etc. It's super mega important, okay, that all ISTPs do this. If they want success in life, they got to keep track of where they've been so they can actually see where they're going. Otherwise, they're just going to be constantly looking at life with the deer in the headlights look that, every ISTP actually naturally has, if you think about it. So anyway, folks, I hope that answers this question. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode, and I'll see you guys tonight.